Welcome to this first webinar about GeoticLog of a series of webinars that are to come. My name is Eric Allary, and I will be presenting this webinar and probably the following ones. Before starting, I'm just going to do a brief history of Geotic. So Geotic was created in 2002 by experienced geologists, and the idea was to have a computerized solution to deal with the pressure from professional and financial sectors, as well as growing number of industry regulatory agencies. So Geotic recruited a bunch of experts, and they've put a GeoticLog together. Okay, Geotic was always always close to their customers and always listening to their needs, and so it improved fairly easily and fast. Okay, so. And that's something to keep in mind. If you have any suggestions or anything, just make them. Okay, so we're always ready and we'll evaluate them. Okay, so today's webinar is probably just going to cover a few things about the interface of GeoticLog, the shortcuts, and just the little tips that you may not know that exist in GeoticLog. Okay, a lot of you already use GeoticLog, but sometimes you just don't know about little features that are available. Okay. Okay, so just to start with, I'm just going to start with the information page. So the information page has a bunch of information, like it says. So you have your location of your database, you have the security type of your database, the last survey that was edited, you have your dongle and the expiration date of your dongle, okay, of your licenses. Okay, it's also possible to know a little bit more about the news and training available, the corrections that were made in the last versions and things like this. And the last button, like I mentioned, if you do have suggestions, don't hesitate. Just write us a comment saying what your needs are, and we'll evaluate it. Everyone's going to receive that email, and we're just going to talk about it and evaluate your suggestion. Okay. Other than this, other things about this window, well, any windows actually, is just Geotic interface. You have your database name out in the top corner. In the bottom left corner, you have the path of your database. In the lower center, you have your username. And at the bottom right corner, you have your version. Okay, so in my case, I have 8.0.2 beta because I'm a beta tester for different for different software for Geotic. Okay. As you may know, okay, these are the different tabs where you're going to describe your or do some operations. Okay, so the first one is the project tab, so you can just enter some information about your survey. Description, this is where you're describing the core or whatever survey you're doing. Okay. Personalized tables are if one of the predefined table of GeoticLog are not meeting your needs, you can create your own table. Okay. You have graphs, so that includes QA/QC and CRNet. You have import/export, so different features about import/exports. Utilities are quite important in here. A lot of people are not using it, but it's quite important. Users, so these are probably going to be defined by your management team or your IT. So it's going to give you permissions to do some to do some operation or add or delete drill holes or things like this. Okay. And you have the library, so how to set your library, add new codes, and so on. Okay. And finally, you have the printing, where you can define a profile, and then you can print your logs or your survey. Okay. Okay. So today, like I mentioned, it was mostly about the interface, the shortcuts, and so on. Okay. So a lot of these features are going to be covered in other webinars, like the library and so on. So I'm not going to focus too much on this. Okay. All right. So the first thing would be probably go into the description or even the project tab. Okay. So whenever you see this little symbol there, it means that you can have this this window as a floating window. Okay, and then you can move it to a different screen, you can move it around, and so on. Okay, so if you want it back to where it used to be, you can just click on the X, and it's going to come back to where it used to be. You can also go into description. Okay, so same kind of idea. You have those little floating windows. You can just put back to where it is, and then if you click the X, it's going to come back to where it used to be. Okay. Also, you've noticed that when I put my mouse over here, it doesn't collapse and expand all the time. Like, I find it personally very annoying when it does that. Okay, so this is done using those little pins. Okay, it says override. So if I put it horizontal, whenever I go into one of those tabs, it's just going to expand. And when I'm gone, it's going to collapse. Okay, I find it very annoying. Once you know the different symbol for the different table tabs names, you can actually just pin this down, and then it doesn't do it again. Okay, so these are the settings that will be saved when you exit GeoticLog. Okay, so you won't have to do this all the time. Okay, same kind of idea here. You have a little pin right in here. So when it's horizontal, that means you can move things around. And this one is used to move those tabs around. So for example, if you want your analysis table at the very beginning, you can just drag it down. Okay, so you just hold the left button and you can just drag it down. However, if I pin this down, I can't move them anymore. Okay, so this is the same kind of idea. Okay. Also here, these are the predefined tables from Geotic. But if you click on that little arrow here, okay, so these are the visible tables. But actually I have a bunch of invisible tables. Okay, so it's possible to remove some of these tables and just add new ones. Okay, so for example, if I click on one of the invisible one, it's just going to pop up here. Okay, so I can just add a bunch of them, and it's just going to keep adding them. Okay, you can also close them. So if I'm right-clicking on one of those tables, you can just close all but this one, and so on. Okay, so it's possible to just play around with these. Okay, there's a bunch of shortcuts for these. They're not that useful. Personally, it's rare that you're moving these things around. So normally you set it up the way you want. But anyway, so the shortcuts are all written in there. Okay. All right, same kind of idea. Okay, so for example, in this table. Okay, so previously I was talking about the table, but for each table, you have the list of columns. So it's possible that you can hide some of these columns of your table. Okay, so we receive some calls sometimes of customers, and they're like, I don't know why, but my element is just gone. And most of the time, it's just that people have hidden this element. Okay, so if you have multi-elements or things like this, you can just hide a few of these. Okay, so that's not a problem. Okay. For those of you who are more advanced and are using SQL or Access in the background, or you want to make links to different other database or other software, there's different tools that you may not know. Okay, so for example, if I'm taking a personalized table and I go in here, if I want to know in the database what is the true name of these columns, okay, so it's possible to do a right click and just click on show the physical name. So that means in the database, for example, litho is called perso 1, grade is called perso 6, okay, and so on. And so it's the same thing if you go in here. If you want to know the name of the different personalized tables, you can just click show the physical name, and it's going to give you the actual table name that is in the database. Okay, and so that's quite useful. The same thing is valid also for the coordinate system. You can just go and you have a number for your coordinate system that is registered into your database. All right, so that's quite useful. Okay, so when you're describing your core or you're doing some description, okay, so just different shortcuts that can be used, okay, so it takes a lot of time to use the mouse and click over and over everywhere. So sometimes it's just faster to just click on the keyboard and just use the keyboard, okay. So the way to do this, you can go from one thing to another using the tab button. Okay, so that's what you would do. If you want to do insert, okay, it's Control N. So Control N would add a new entry. Okay, in this case, I didn't finish to describe this, but Control N is adding. Okay. If you want to be modifying something, okay, so let's say that we are in here and you want to click modify, okay, so you would just press enter. Okay, so I would just go into that drill hole and press enter, and then it would be in edit mode. Okay, and I can press cancel. If you want to delete these survey, for example, you just press delete on your keyboard. So that's fairly easy. Okay, then it gets a little bit more tricky. Okay, so if we go back into description, you can actually, if you have different things in here, okay, you can actually press Control Home, and that's going to bring you to the first entry of your table. Okay. If you press Control and the arrow up, okay, that's going to go again up. If I press the arrow down, it's going to go to the last at the bottom. Okay. Or if you press Control End, it's also going to go to the bottom. Okay. Again, Control N is for a new entry. If you press delete, it's going to delete this. If you want to save, okay, you would press Control S, and that would save your entry. If you want to undo, is typical is Control Z, so that's going to be the undo button. And if you want to refresh, this is F5. Okay, so you can just refresh. If you want to go from one tab to another, instead of taking your mouse and just going there, you can actually press Control Page Up and Page Down to move from one tab to another. Okay, so if I do this, I can just move from one to the other. Okay, so that's just shortcuts so you don't have to use the mouse. Okay, also, okay, so if you are, for example, if I'm using this, I'm going to go do a Control N. So I'm going here. Okay, let's say this is 5 meters. I'm going to press the arrow here to select my degree. And then I can just move to the next one. Press the arrow to find whatever alteration I'm using here. If I want to be adding this, I'm going to press Control Insert. And if I do this, it's just going to bring this alteration with the degree in here. Okay, and if I want to move, I can just use a tab and write down the description, and then I can save by Control S. Okay, so these are just handy, just handy shortcuts that can be useful. Okay. Okay, also here in the description, if you right click here, there's the standard description, okay? So you can add one by Control 1, okay? So the way to set up the standard description is you go to the library, okay? For example, you do modify, and you can go into description, and you can just type down a description that you will always use for this type of rock. And so instead of having to type the same text over and over and over again, when you're doing the description here, if I press Control 1, it's just going to add the description that goes with this alteration, for example, or for this lithology or whatever you're using. Okay, so this is quite handy and it saves a lot of time. Okay, also in here you see the preview. Okay, there's a lot of things in this preview. There's a lot of color codes, and the way to set these up so they show properly, okay, is you go into the library, and then every library, every dictionary here, you can assign an alphanumeric color code. Okay, obviously you have to build your color codes beforehand, but in every library thing there, you can add an alphanumeric or a number color code in here. Okay, and so this is the color code that is shown into the preview in here. Okay, and that's why I have colors in there. If there's nothing written in there, nothing's going to show up. Same thing into the personalized table. When you create a personalized table, here, where is it? Oh, sorry. It's in the column here. You have your color code written in there, and so you can just assign your color codes in there. Okay, and this is what's going to show up. At the very bottom here, it says element for the preview. So for this table, you have to choose one of the column to be shown into the preview. If you have nothing selected in there, it's not going to show into your preview. Okay, so you just select one of this column, and then just add a color code for that column, and then it's going to show up into your preview. Okay. Also, like while you were talking about a preview, you can just over the mouse there, and then you have the interval, you know, the sample number, for example, and so on in here. This is for the lithology and so on. So you can get a lot of information in there. So this is kind of a strip log, but not really. Strip logs are going to be available very soon if they're not already. You can print this if you press on the print button, but it's more or less useful. Okay. There's different tabs in here. So you have Explorer, so you can just, for example, for this drill hole, you can see the different lithologies that were described, the different alterations, and the different assays. So you can actually just expand this and know exactly the description for that drill hole. Also, photo just show you the different photos that are associated with this drill hole with the interval. Okay, so you need to enter those photos via GeoticLog, and then it's going to show up your photos in there. And finally, information is just related to your project, so you can have your coordinates, what is the starting azimuth and dip, and so on, and what are your downhole surveys, and so on. Okay, so you can get a lot of information just related to that drill hole. Okay. All right. Also, if you are, for example, into the library, when you put your mouse over one of the as a dictionary, you have an overview of the dictionary into your into here. Okay, so it just gives you an idea of what it is. Okay, so you don't have to click in it; you can just have an idea here. Okay. One important thing is if you find your GeoticLog to be very, very slow, and if you're not using the preview, we suggest that you hide it. Okay, so these double arrows like this are to hide it. The preview takes a lot of memory. It takes a lot of juice. So you may want to just collapse it, and your GeoticLog is going to go much faster. Okay, just to let you know. Also, in here, whenever you are into a table, okay, so you don't want to be like this, you can actually search for surveys. So if I'm clicking on this, I can just go say, okay, let's just take 4, and it's going to bring me directly to that drill hole. The other search button here is more advanced. So you can search either for an assay or a survey, and you can just put some parameters into your research. So you can just search directly into your database some information. Okay. Okay, just few more little things. When you do get an error message in GeoticLog or whatever Geotic products you're using, it's always useful to send that message error. Okay, and what you should be doing is it's going to prompt you. Okay, do you want to send this to GeoticLog to Geotic team? And if you say yes, just write down a comment of what you were doing when it happened. Okay, and so we're going to have a look at what is the error, and we're going to try to fix it. If it's not like Windows, when you have error message in Windows, you send them and there's nothing going on. In Geotic, we actually take care of those error messages, and then we try to fix them. Okay. Also, if you do have problems, there's a few things about Geotic. You can always go into the help. Okay, so if we're not reachable for some reason, you can always go into help. There's quite an extensive help menu. You can have a look at these. Otherwise, you can always just call us, or you can. Okay, sorry, I don't know why I closed it. If you double click on that logo, it's going to close GeoticLog, just to warn you. Okay, so if I'm going here in Geotic on the web, there's a place called Remote Support, and that allowed us to take control of your computer, and so we can help you fix your problem. If you have questions about setting up your database or things like this, we can connect to your computer and help you out. Okay, so if we're talking about TeamViewer, this is exactly where it is. Okay, so you can find it here. Okay, and one last thing, it is possible, especially if you're in an Access database, that you do get some corruptions. This is just the way the information is saved into an Access database. Okay, so what you may want to do if it happens, okay, and if you keep on getting error messages, just do a compact DB. Okay, it's a good practice to just do a compact DB. It's going to reduce the size of your database, but also it's going to try to repair those little mistakes that are in your database that that gives you trouble. Okay, so I think that covers pretty much what I wanted to cover for today. So I'm ready to take questions. Don't hesitate. I'm here for that. And so on. So it's open for you.